I chair the SMPTE study group for sustainability in media. This was a group created just at the beginning of summer, which is always a good time to start standards work. We were created by the Standards Committee as okay, good. We're created by the Standards Committee as a essentially an advisory. The goal is for us to recommend to SMPTE or advise SMPTE of any opportunities for standards, recommended practices, engineering guidelines that could promote sustainability in professional media systems and allied systems. Fundamental problem to be solved. I think it's relatively common knowledge, promoted by the UN, ISO. Sustainable development is an issue. Robin, who speaks after me, has some slides on that, so I won't go into details. But the ability to standardize sustainability-related aspects of media systems, I mean, this could involve measurements, this could involve metadata, this could involve recommended practices, and it needn't necessarily be related to a particular device, because there might be other devices downstream in a media workflow that could take advantage and generate the sustainability savings that you're looking to optimize the system overall, rather than just paying attention to a local minima, and which is valuable too, but it's not the not necessarily the best possible outcome. So taking a look at that, understanding that, and being able to make recommendations for standards. I think I covered the goal, recommended practices. So when the group came together, we recognized that other SDOs have been at this for multiple years. I co-chair with Robin, the next speaker, ATSC's Planning Team 9, which is also directed to sustainability and studying that. Work has gone on in EBU, in ISO, studying opportunities for sustainability in media systems, consumer systems, and much more broad than just our industry. And so when SMPTE started this work, we thought, well, I mean, there are years worth of study to be done, kind of learn the lay of the land, learn the philosophies of sustainability, and think about where that might work in our systems. But other people have already been doing this for a couple of years. So let's just ask them. Is there something that SMPTE could be doing in the domain of professional media that we'd be able to have, an actionable outcome, before year end, or, early into the next year? And, we'll keep working on it, keep coming up with, ideas as we spin up. But if somebody can give us a lift or, bootstrap, assist, let's do that. So we've set up a Survey Monkey, and this barcode will be on the next couple of slides, so you have time. I mean, to put it really concisely, it's a suggestions box, but it's SMPTE asking other standards organizations to ask their members if there's something SMPTE should be paying attention to, should be thinking about in the domain of standardization or recommended practice. The idea is not to ask ISO or EBU to come up with a consensus recommendation, because that would take plenty of time and isn't necessary for them to do. But if their individual members have had a thought, have had an idea, have recognized a shortcoming or an opportunity in something SMPTE already publishes or something SMPTE could publish, then that would be the kind of recommendation we're looking for. The required information is very simple. Give us a headline, give us your description. If you've got that as a document, you're welcome to upload the document instead. Optional information, you can be completely anonymous. Particularly, or if you would like to be contacted, so maybe if we have a follow-up question, or if you'd like to be notified, when SMPTE decides to undertake a project, because maybe you want to be involved, then we're glad to collect that information, but it's not a requirement. I think I just said the responses collected will be treated anonymously for the purposes of reporting, and the suggestions will be aggregated and summarized as we report back to the Standards Committee. Standards Committee has the option of publishing our report publicly. So it is a goal we have to try to report something useful before year end. In that regard, early responses by the end of November are certainly appreciated, but the survey will be at least open into the next quarter, and my suspicion is longer than that. But that's what we're assured of so far. So I'll say thank you. Get ready to turn it over to Robin. But is there any questions?
It's all right. I want to make sure everyone can hear.
Thank you. Veronica from Deluxe Media. I'm in Technology Committee 27C.
Yes.
I'm thinking from the lens of a student, i.e. right behind me. And if I was new to standards and we were talking about sustainability, does SMPTE have anything for a student to come in and just observe? How do standards work? Sit in our SMPTE standard technology meetings and just start to learn.
So presently, the study group on sustainability is I'm going to say right now it's SMPTE members. So to the extent that somebody is a SMPTE member and a participating member, in the standards development, then anybody is welcome to join in on the meetings, and it's all part of the team's interface. There are opportunities, and we have exploited these, on an occasional basis to invite somebody in as a guest to observe or to report or present. So that's, something that is feasible. I don't have my contact information on the slide. I apologize. That's a mistake. But, and answer the survey, say, call me.
Actually,
and here's why.
Interject also, as the chair of SMPTE Hollywood, we're making a concerted effort to reach out to students. So we're trying to put on more and more events that are focused on students. We have a couple of the committee. Oh, he disappeared. But we have a couple of committee members in the room, or at least here at the conference. But another thing. Oh, thank you. We also want to make sure that people know that these events are going on. So this particular event we've tried to make as student-friendly as we can, and make sure to connect everybody, like Bill, with the students. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And Robin, I'll just let you introduce yourself because we're running a little bit late.
Sure.
Yep. So good morning, everyone. I'm Robin Heron. I am a Director of Standardization for TEM. I am also the co-chair with Bill, actually, of the planning team for focused on sustainability within the HCSC standardization group. One quick slide at first to just explain what is it that we do as part of the planning team that we have as part of Planning Team 9. Just defining the scope. The first time we discussed what we wanted to do with the working group, with the planning team itself, was just define exactly what should be the main goals that we have. As part of the scope that we decided to establish, we decided we should have 5 main points. First one would be to working on how to develop methods specifically to evaluate measure energy consumption, how to measure an organization's progress towards sustainability as well, so not just focus on the method on measuring the energy consumption, but also measuring an organization's progress. Work closely with other standardization groups. That means, for instance, SMPTE, for instance, but also other bodies within Europe, within South America. Develop message points, basically being able to act as give some proper talking points that can be reused in further conferences or by other bodies as well, based on the results and our findings. And finally, recommend at the end, and that's the final goal of our planning team, which is recommend technical work that can be achieved. It can be leveraged by other broadcasters, ATS broadcasters, and other groups within North America and actually even beyond. So, as part of the findings that we actually got, we divided in a couple sections. I'm sorry, Rick, I know you were at the NextGen conference. This is going to feel very familiar for you. But we divided this into the sustainability policies and standards, some of the improvements that you can achieve today, and then some more improvements that are to come and are additional studies that are still happening. So, back to the very basics, and Bill hinted at this at the very beginning of his presentation. The very origin of the goal, sustainability as a goal, goes back to just the United Nations 2030 agenda. As part of this, it presents 17 different goals focused on sustainability. Not everything is relevant to media as a whole. However, there are 4 specific points that are relevant to us, which focus on industry, innovation, infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, since after all, TV is used as a medium to contact and reach out to the communities as well, responsible consumption and production, and finally, climate action. Goal 13 obviously calls for immediate action to combat climate change and its impact. As part of this study, one of the main things that came out of this was also the greenhouse gas protocol. Basically, it's separated in 3 separate scopes. Scope 1 being direct emissions, basically direct CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emitted by fuel consumption. Indirect emissions, fuel burns through electricity generators, for example. And finally, indirect emissions from employees, suppliers, customers of yours. That would include, for example, in our case, in media industry, potential TV buyers, the audience is actually watching this on a device. Do you include that as part of the scope 3, and so on and so forth? One thing that, as part of all of these standards and all of these studies that are already existing that we found is there are already some studies that do exist that you can kind of divide in these specific sections. First, focused on content creation, content manipulation, and content distribution. Content creation is mostly focused on the studios, so anyone who is working on doing media production, there are some studies that are already existing today. Albert, for example, is a very good case study about what was done in the UK for TV production, media production, and the evaluation of energy consumption for those. Content manipulation, VFX, virtual production, and so on. This is still ongoing. Cloud storage, I think AWS, for example, has started to work on this as well, but this is still, I'd say, a rollout. And finally, on the other end, on the content distribution side, there are still many studies that are already existing, along with actual standards, study bodies or commissions, I should say, that are existing, that are working on energy consumption right now. Greening of streaming is one of the main ones, carbon trust as well. Those do come out with proper recommendations and their own results of and their findings on energy consumptions. DVB, as you may know, is one of the major standards organizations within Europe, probably the main one. They came out earlier this year with the DVB S100 Blue Book. It's a major report including a lot of their findings on energy consumption. Two things that are really important as part of the study itself. The first one is, from their point of view, broadcasting itself is less energy heavy, consumes less energy than streaming itself. That means, from a sheer point of, if you can imagine, if you're serving all customers at once, all your audience at once versus doing one at a time, you're basically saving energy just from a workflow standpoint. As part of some of the insights that they added in the Blue Book, they say that one thing that we should do is not just look at specific parts of the media workflow and try to optimize each thing apart, but actually looking at having a holistic approach on the system and how we actually transmit media today and see how we can improve all of this at once. So as new technology emerge, I think there are still going to be some more improvements to come, and the study is a very good one that you can actually look at right now. As part of, again, more studies that we saw, this one was actually coming out of the CTA, the Consumer Technology Association. They actually wanted to look at the energy consumption impact of modern televisions. Their idea was to encourage proper illumination of images while still keeping the energy usage fairly low. Based on this, they actually developed a methodology, a proper standard they call determination of television set power consumption, with the proper dim line that you can use as a regulation for TV sets. So again, that's something that's existing today. Now, as for the improvement that you can actually implement also right now within your ecosystem. So this specific graph focuses a lot on what we did for ATSC 1.0 and ATSC 3.0, so it's very heavy on the broadcast side. Basically, if you look at the over-the-air standards that exist for terrestrial transmission, pretty much up until we started doing ATSC 3.0 in 2017, 2018, ATSC 1.0 was only offering 19.4 megabits per second for fixed signal-to-noise ratio, whereas what we call next-gen TV, which is the latest standards, offers a whole 25 megabits per second. So if you follow the Shannon limits, which is kind of the limit between bandwidth that you can get and the actual strength of the signal, we're basically capable of having a higher capacity but less robust signal, but we're also capable of increasing the amount of bandwidth that we have in there, we're capable of fitting. So again, newer standards, we're looking at a 30% efficiency gain in bandwidth just through this new standard that's being implemented for over the air in the US. Yes, now you can see it a little closer. As part of all of those implementations, one of the main ones that we worked with exciter manufacturers was looking at the efficiency and somewhat inefficiency of the exciters themselves. What we found out is that if you look at the latest implementations of TV transmitters today, we are looking at a whole lot of improvements in energy consumption and efficiency compared to what TV transmission and terrestrial transmission was 5, 10, 15 years ago. That's something that we see across the board from different manufacturers. It comes through semiconductors improvements, cooling system improvements, and overall, again, modern transmitters offer an additional energy efficiency improvement on top of everything that we mentioned so far. On the codec side, again, mentioning this transition between ATSC 1.0 to the standards that we have today, ATSC 3.0, we're looking at HEVC, which is obviously compared to MPEG-2, which is what was used on ATSC 1.0, 4 times more efficient. That means you're basically looking at a 5-time improvement in images per bit, a huge improvement again. In the same way, if you're looking at what's happening in Brazil for their terrestrial TV, they were planning on using VVC, which means, again, an additional 4 times increase in efficiency compared to MPEG-4 in that scenario. HEVC is also part of that spec, but it's used as the complementary technology for their OTT transmission that comes on the side. So it's basically a mix of broadcast and broadband, and HEVC is also available as part of this. So again, not just improvements that are feasible in the US, in broadcast in the US, but also broadcast everywhere. Finally, those are improvements that to come, improvements that are still being studied, things that we're looking to add in the future. Reducing the energy consumption just by doing signal processing at the device itself, at the TV. Obviously, the energy consumption by display depends on the type of TV you're actually using, depending on LEDs. We now have OLEDs, QLEDs, and so on and so forth. Depending on the type of TV you have, along with the type of content, you're going to get a different energy consumption. The goal of this, the idea of this system would be to actually do signal processing to be able to reduce up to 10% the energy consumption while still retaining the same video quality at the device. It's still, again, something that's being worked out right now, but interesting idea for the future. Something that we actually worked on in the past as well, and that's from one of my colleagues at SEM, is improvements on encoding and streaming. Again, looking at additional pre-processing that could be applying to all codecs. So any improvements that you see today on VVC, for example, but that may not be on the codec itself, maybe in pre-processing, that can be applied to any other type of content as well. Machine learning-based quality metrics can actually improve results as well. We're looking at content-aware ABR ladders, basically being able to adjust the amount of profiles that you have on your OTT streaming ladders itself, based on the audience actually watching which content and which profiles. And having this level of analytics allow for potentially up to 40% energy reduction. Finally, working with VVC as well. Again, as we're mentioning, we're seeing an additional energy reduction with VVC itself, 50% size reduction by using CMAF within CMAF content as well. And we're looking at support for both broadcast and multicast with this codec, which again, it's fairly interesting for us. You can aggregate a lot of these simple energy reduction into a single one and eventually achieve very, very high results and eventually savings on the power grid. So looking at what was coming next, with the Planning Team 9 and some of the next work, we wanted to look into ESG reports, something that we actually did for SET Expo in Brazil. We met with some of the people from Globo, with one of the major broadcasters over there in Brazil, and they actually showed us how they looked at their own ESG report. Today, a lot of the people who look at ESG are mostly looking at the scope 3, I would say, scope 2 and scope 3, which is mostly focused on their employee, the sustainability of their operation, but not really the media side. We're curious to see and work with broadcasters on how they would actually quantify energy consumption for their own ESG report, but specifically focusing on media. Something that today we're only seeing with streaming direct-to-consumer applications. Netflix, for example, have huge ESG report focusing on their media operations. Energy measurements. Greening Streaming is working on developing a KPI for their energy-centric KPI, to be clear, to consider how facility or the expenditure of that consider the facility of the device energy expenditure is allocated to individual video programs. We're still looking at the implications of broadcast on mobile devices. It's still something that's being worked around, especially right now with the conversation around D2X in India, for instance. And finally, the lower carbon graphics design. The BBC did some reporting last year or earlier this year on their new dark mode for their music channels. It would be curious to see if there's any implementation that could be used for us as well. As a conclusion, there's a lot of different facets and lots of different aspects of sustainability. It's not really just a simple straight road. There's a lot of content already existing, a lot of improvements that can be implemented, and more to come. As part of HCS, the HCS organization, we can tell you that for what can be implemented today in over-the-air transmission, next-gen TV is already quite competitive. And we're hoping and planning to propose recommended practices as part of Planning Team 9. Thank you.